Hey everybody, welcome back to the Nidus Anarchy series. I'm your host, Adam, the CIO and co-founder of Nidus. We have Ian, the podcast producer. I've invited him back because I think it is a super important aspect to redo this as many times as possible.
You know why this is driving me nuts? Because of what just happened with Riverside. Like, I don't trust myself. I'm like, is it recording? And it is. Everything is fine.
Just so you guys at home understand, we're going to leave this in, by the way. So just so you know what happened is this particular camera we're recording with, I turned off the little red blinking light to let you know it's recording because for something else I was recording, I didn't want the light on. It wasn't being sneaky, but anyway, I've been too lazy to put the red blinking light on. We just did a whole podcast interview with an amazing dude, and the whole thing shit the bed, and we lost the video quite possibly. We'll find out here. We'll see here soon. But anyway, so now Ian's a little bit paranoid that we're not recording.
Yeah.
So now
by the way, if any tech people are watching, this is a prop. You're probably wondering why do they just have a microphone on the table?
It's not plugged into anything.
Yeah.
We just thought it would look cool, and then this way, if you're watching, you're like, oh look, there's a microphone. That's how they're. It's actually these. This is what we're recording the audio for these DJI mics. By the way, these DJI mics are amazing. If you want to check them out, these little remote lavalier mics, they come in this cool charging case. I don't know why I'm promoting these right now, but they're freaking awesome.
We should say, for anybody who's been a subscriber to the podcast for a long time now, this is what we use when we've been on the floor at Identity Week, at Identiverse, and unlike other things that I was worried about today, like we have never run into an issue. If you hit record, these are going to record and great quality. Yeah,
just clip on, and they have like little USB-C to just suck the audio right off. You can even set them as a left-right. Like you can do, and I think it's less than $300. I don't know, but these things are a lifesaver. Super small, compact, and they last forever. Like the battery, I've never had a battery die, and I've talked for hours on these things. So anyway,
shameless promotion.
Let's skip on to that. So anyway, I brought Ian on to talk about the podcast because I think it's good to have a outsider's perspective, like a non-super technical person, because I tend to think only in the crazy low-level tech stuff. And what seems to be is that a lot of people are reacting to the kind of high-level tech stuff that I don't think is worthwhile mentioning, because I just assume everyone already knows that stuff. So Ian's here to ask questions and bring me back down to reality about talking about these things that we're going to talk about. And today, we're going to talk about the Wyze breach that took place. And it really wasn't a breach as much as it was a mess-up between two different companies that cause people to see other people's videos and thumbnails in the app. So I got an email from Wyze because I have a lot of Wyze products. I used to have Wyze cameras actually everywhere in my house. I had, because they're stupid cheap. I mean, they're probably the cheapest, best webcam that you can get just for like plaster around your house. They have outdoor ones now and everything. So, but I mean, like, ridiculously cheap. Now I don't use the cameras anymore, which I'll get into why, but I still use their little plugs, these little bad boys, because I think you get like two of them for like $20, and they work perfectly and they integrate with the Google Home. So I have, I mean, like all my lamps and my kids' TVs and all that kind of stuff. So this way it's like, hey, 8 o'clock, everything's off, boop, the whole house just turns off just because these little bad boys. Makes life super simple. So Wyze, really cheap, good stuff, but I don't do them. I now have some Google Nest cams around, and I'm actually looking to rip all those out, and I'm going to move to these things. So this is Ubiquiti cameras. So this way they record locally completely. So this will all make sense in a minute. But first, let's talk about what Wyze sent out. So I got an email from Wyze. We're going to kind of go through this a little bit because there's a lot to unpack here.
Sure.
On Friday morning, we had a service outage that led to a security incident. Your account and over 99.75% of accounts were not affected, but we wanted to let you know what happened. Okay.
But actually, I already have a question. Because we've had this happen before with other hacks. When they say 99.97, do you think that's accurate, or that's them being as, giving you the best thing as possible to feel relieved?
Okay. The majority of the time, I would say it's their current best guess that they feel comfortable saying to the public. Because a lot of these people are public companies. And when you make an announcement of there was a security breach of any kind, you're guaranteeing your stock is at risk.
That's what I mean. So is it possible, let's just say it affected, instead of saying 0.07 or whatever,
this happened
and it
with
affected 5%, it's not provable to the outside right away. So
no, there's no way for us to know.
So don't you think it's just sometimes when they say a number that it's damage control possibly?
I 100% agree it's damage control, but I think they have some backing to that number for some reason, because especially if they're a public company, then shareholders or big people can be like, hey, look, where'd this number come from? Like, you can't just spout out fake numbers. That's illegal, right?
Although a lot of companies do.
For sure. But like, look at Okta. They originally said that the breach
That's what I'm thinking of.
was a
Yes.
much smaller amount. Then all of a sudden, it turned out to be 99% of everyone actually was breached, and they're like, oh man, that's horrible. Now, yes, so the 99.75 is probably a conflated number that sounds good to make everyone not sound as bad. So really what that probably means is whatever actually happened, they have records that show these particular amount of accounts were breached or something went wrong with them. So therefore, out of all of our customers, and I guarantee you, they're taking all of their customers. They're not being like only the ones that had this exact same situation. They're probably saying, hey, if you bought a Wyze plug, you're one of our customers. Don't worry, you're not affected by this. It's like, oh, no, but that can make their number look way bigger. So like, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Now, when you get into it, I think they say the actual number is around 13,000 people. So 99.75% of everyone being fine sounds great, but 13,000 people getting messed up sounds not great.
Yeah.
And so let's continue a little bit more because it gets, I'm gonna say worse, but better for us. So the outage originated from our partner AWS, and it took down Wyze Devices for several hours early on Friday morning. So what they're immediately saying is it wasn't us, it was AWS. They had an outage of some kind which caused everything to bomb out. This does happen, and this is something that I tell clients all the time because they think like, oh, we're in the cloud. Not even just AWS or Google or Azure, but even just we're having a cloud service, some software as a service that they sign up for. And they're like, oh, it's in the cloud, it's always up. It's like, no. They have like a guaranteed uptime of probably like 5 nines, which means 99.9999%. Now, that still means you can be down for a few hours out of the year of downtime. And it does happen. I've had EC2 instances just all of a sudden they just freeze up and die and no idea why. And what'll happen is so AWS has problems. I mean, it's a computer, shit breaks. It happens all the time. People push in bad code, as we just saw with AT&T and their whole network, and people want to say it's a solar flare. Okay. Anyway, so I think that yes, it's AWS's fault, but if Wyze developed their architecture properly, there should have been highly available systems to prevent that from happening in the first place. Because yes, everything breaks. That's why we know that. That's why we design things to be highly available, or HA. And true HA, no one wants to do because it's too expensive. So true HA, I know I'm totally segueing here, but if I have a computer, right? I got this box here, and this is the server serving the video. Let's pretend this is the actual server that has the video on it, and I'm going to stream, I want to watch it. Now, if I want to go and I say, hey, I want to watch my video, I connect to the server and it shows me the video. Well, what happens if that server dies? I can't view my video anymore, right? Yep. So now, to make things highly available, what we do is we'll stand up 2 servers that have the exact same content. And then we put what's called a load balancer in front of it. So now I'm going to say, hey, I want to watch my videos. I contact this server. This server is constantly keeping track to make sure these servers are healthy. And then what it does is it load balances. So it'll send half the load to this one and half the load to that one. So that's why I get my videos. Now, if this one dies, well, now it just sends all the load here. Sure. So you might have a little bit of an outage for like a minute while it's figuring out the health check, but now you're okay. Now this is HA, or highly available. But true HA is when you have 3 servers. So you contact the load balancer. If this server dies, you're still highly available. You still can survive while you figure out what's going on here. Now, if this one goes down, now you have single point of failure, and this is what you always want to stay away from. So Wyze had a single point of failure, and it wwent down, and they're blaming AWS for their bad architecture. So it's kind of a mixed bag. Yes, AWS's servers went down or whatever, so that's on them, but it is also Wyze's fault that they didn't have proper architecture in place. And this is something I've experienced regularly, is people designing cloud architecture like they do for on-prem servers. Like when you have a data center, you design your networks and your computer systems to work a very specific way. And we've been doing that for decades. So it's hardwired into most of our brains, is this is how you design systems. But when you go into the cloud, you design your systems completely different. And if you try to do it how you do for on-prem systems, you wind up making a complete mess and nothing works right, and it becomes way more expensive and frustrating, and you're sitting there going, oh, why isn't this working? It's like, well, because you did it all wrong. And this is something we see all the time with people trying to design stuff. So most likely, something along those lines happened, and that's why Wyze went down. So they're blaming AWS. Now, let's continue. If you tried to view live cameras on events during that time, you likely weren't able to, because the one server was no longer working, and we're sorry. As we worked to bring the cameras back online, we experienced a security issue. Some users reported seeing the wrong thumbnails and event videos in their events tabs. So when everything came back on and people said, hey, I want to watch my video, they're getting video streams and thumbnails of other people's cameras.
That's crazy.
That's the crazy part. That's the scary part. Because
their videos can be anything.
Anything. I mean, most likely, I would say 99.75%, you can quote me on that number, are probably just boring videos of just people's empty rooms or parking lots and stuff. But as we all know, because we've all seen leaked tapes and other fun things.
It's their private, it's supposed to be their private property.
Right.
The private intellectual property.
People have cameras in their houses all the time. Right? And they don't think of it like, oh, it's just me and no one's watching it. They promised me and all this other crap. So, for a brief moment in time, it looks like around 13,000 people were able to view other people's videos and thumbnails, which that's concerning. And then they say it's a third-party software that we used, and that's what messed it all up. So we're not going to use it anymore. There's actually one part in here. This is the last thing I want to read from here because I thought it was hilarious. So let's see. Okay, here we go. The client library received unprecedented load conditions caused by devices coming back online all at once. This is actually a legit thing that no one plans for or develops for. So I can see how this could be a cause as to why this all happens. As a result of increased demand, it mixed up device ID and user ID mappings and connected some data to incorrect accounts. So first off, I think it's hilarious that Wyze is telling people this low level of detail. But the fact is, like, what do you think? What's that sound? Does that sound legit?
You would know better than me on this. It's outside my...
So computers don't mix up things.
Yeah.
You say it's this and then it's this. Like, computers don't have an opinion. Even AI doesn't have an opinion, right? Yeah. So the fact that they're trying to say like, oh, the computer just messed up. It just thought this and it should have thought that. That's not how things work. So right there, that's when my BS meter just goes whoop, right to the top. Because it's like, okay, that's absolutely not what happened. And then they say we're going to try to fix it and hey, we're going to try to do better, whatever. So the big takeaway of this is don't use Wyze. And it's not because their servers went down. It's not because they were sharing their other videos. Well, it is because they're sharing other videos, I should say. Because the reason I got rid of all my Wyze cameras and everything, because one, yeah, they were so cheap and it was just awesome and a great video and I could see it from my phone. That's all great. But two things. One, all your video is going into the cloud. You don't have control of your video and it's 100% being stored. And could that be hacked and compromised and someone have it? Or could it be used for malicious purposes? Sure, I don't know. They have it, right? So storing your video in the cloud to me already is a big no-no to me, which is why I'm moving even all my Google cameras and get rid of all those. And I'm going to these things, which I have a server over there and it records everything locally to a hard drive. So only I have it. No one will ever be able to get it. Also, if you kill power to my house, my cameras still record. That's one of the other fun things. Like if you're actually like, if you're legit thinking, how am I going to break into something and do something? You're going to kill the power to the video systems. So a real CCTV system has its own power supply, backup systems, and it's like these things are PoE, which means the Ethernet cable that plugs in that provides the data also powers them. So as long as that thing has power, which I can have a battery plugged into, all the cameras still work, even if someone comes in and clips the main to my house. So if you have an office building or whatever, if you're going to break into something, the first thing you want to do is make sure you don't get caught, right? So you could wear a mask, which is great, but if you just eliminate the entire source of surveillance, then you don't have to worry about it. So with all these cheap cameras, if you kill the internet, or if you kill the phone lines and the internet and the power, you know, they're not going anywhere. But really, you just got to kill the internet. And that ain't hard. When you're outside looking at the lines, there's power lines, whatever, and you're going to see some little tiny line that comes into the house. Well, guess what? It says Verizon on it. Snip. There goes their internet. Their cameras aren't recording anything anymore. So now you're completely safe. So anyway, that's another reason. But Wyze specifically, which is why I moved to Google, is when I found out that Wyze was a completely Chinese company that then kind of got its start here in, I believe, Seattle. I'm not 100% positive on that, but somewhere here in the States. They basically built up the company, but they're completely backed by China. And if you know how business works in China, there's no such thing as my business. It's a business that my country allows me to own and run, and I do whatever they say, and I give them everything that they want.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a hard stretch for me to make a very presumptuous connection of, well, let's see, if we, China, that can make and manufacture everything cheaper than anywhere else in the world, make and manufacture the cheapest video camera, and we even make it where we sell it at a loss, but we get them into everyone's house. We now have video surveillance on the whole world.
Yeah.
And they're paying us to do it. It's the best, like, it's the best counterintelligence model ever. Like, you're getting free surveillance on everyone, and not just surveillance, right? Because now everyone understands AI because it's more in the public light, But techie people, we've known about this stuff for years, and we've been terrified about it forever, right?
But
So
people even domestically worry about the same thing. I mean, because we always, the Patriot Act and that they could spy on you. So
Right.
people do still feel the same way about having even American-owned companies that are able to do surveillance in your home.
which is why I'm getting rid of Google. I don't trust Google anymore either, because they've been in cahoots with people. I don't want to go too much into that, but it's not worth it. You know what I mean? With the risk versus reward, localized system, way more secure, way safer. I don't have to worry about it anymore. No more breaches. I don't have to worry about their servers not working. Like, oh, I can't view the camera. Why? Well, because one of their boxes, there's network's messed up. Like, that's stupid too. I don't want any of that.
Knowing you, I feel like you could kind of like create your own system.
That's exactly that's what these cameras are doing, is I'm making my own system because it's just safer. And it's not terribly difficult, honestly. If you look at Ubiquiti's Dream Machine, that's what I use for the switch over there and the router, whatever. And then these little camera bad boys, I think these things are like $80. So these aren't even, super expensive. It's just, I think the Wyze ones are like 30. So yeah, I'm not a big fan of China just having complete access to me. And so I was saying the surveillance part, like I was like, oh, what are they doing? Just watching me? Like, who cares? I'm just walking around my house in my underwear, picking my butt. Like, okay, like no one cares about that. No one's gonna watch that. But think of it the other way. Everyone's paranoid about their little Google thing or their phones listening to them all the time. Well, these are 100% listening to you, absolutely streaming everything. And this is going to China, and they're absolutely indexing and recording everything. So they not only just recording everything about you, they know everything about you.
Sure.
They know everything about you because you're talking all the time to your family. And when you talk to your family, you talk about secrets. You talk about stuff that doesn't leave your house. Right?
Yeah, which, by the way, is why that recent news story when China had that spy balloon, people were wondering what it actually was that was flying over the Midwest, because a lot of people say, well, so many Americans already have TikTok and all these Chinese run companies running surveillance. So what is this doing that's not already doing?
Yeah, like your phone. That's my favorite thing, is when you get like these, like, I understand conspiracy theories and tracking and tracing, because that's one of it. A lot of stuff's happening. I've been witnessing it. I mean, look up, if you're curious, you want to look up the history of fun things that our government's been doing. Look up the old program called Carnivore. We used to run on Windows NT, which, to give you an idea, that's old Windows from like 92. So, I mean, this is a long time ago. But look up Carnivore, look up the Echelon project. This is kind of how this all started back then. And just imagine where they are now when you see what they were doing back in the early 90s. So anyway, homework for you. What was your question? I got totally sidetracked.
No, there wasn't a question. I think it was just the fact that, people worry about all type of surveillance.
So people are worried about surveillance. And you also hear a lot of extreme people saying they don't want to be microchipped, right? Like, I don't want to be tracked. I don't want to be constantly recorded. It's like, this 100% records your location within feet, 24 hours a day.
I was going to say, if you have it turned on, but they could still,
Again, we've talked about this before. Ian, he actually leaves his location turned off all the time on his phone as well. He doesn't use Google Maps. He just knows where to go.
But it's for the same things that you are worried about.
I 100% understand, and I agree with you completely.
Yeah.
I just given up. I just don't care.
But at the same
time,
I know enough from watching shows like Forensic Files and all that if I make a call, they can still ping where that call is made from.
You don't even have to make a call.
Yeah.
They can tell where you've been just because your phone is constantly talking to the towers to say where you are, so it knows where to send a call or a text.
So they still know my location, it's just
100%.
maybe not as readily available.
Right, yeah. I mean, if they want to, it'll take them a little bit of work, but yeah, they'll 100% know exactly where you were. And they can trace your whole life because you're carrying around the tracking device.
Yeah.
So yeah, that whole thing of like, I'm being surveilled. But when it's an actual video camera in your house that's 100% recording video and audio and streaming it to a server in China, no one's worried about that, but they're worried about some shot that's going to track them and record their buying habits. One thing I was saying before was, I think AI now, because it's so in the news and in everyone's face, everyone is now realizing what's possible. Or they're like, oh, wait, like with AI, I could make me look like Arnold Schwarzenegger in a second, or vice versa. I could make anyone look like, let's say I have a video camera outside a storefront, and the video shows this guy absolutely robbing that store. Well, now when you go to court, they're going to be like, hey, look, here's the video of this guy robbing the store. It's clear as day. It's not even like that crappy, grainy nighttime video. Like, this is 4K. The dude has the best camera ever. This is him stealing the stuff and walking out the door and giving the middle finger and making a face and walking out the door. Well, as soon as you say, well, that wasn't me, you did that with AI. And like, that's impossible. And then I could make that video right now. And I could probably make that video in a day and then deliver it and be like, hey, look, here's the prosecutor stealing from that convenience store at the exact same time. Now all of a sudden you delivered reasonable doubt in that video evidence, which means that video evidence garbage. So we're going to have to move to a lot different system. Well, one, we're going to move to a different system with regards to tracking and tracing of video and audio to show that there's like how it was handled the entire way of chain of custody, which is going to be interesting. So there's going to be a whole new tech built out just for validating recordings to prove that they're not deep fakes. Like we're going to see a whole new industry spout out, which no one's talking about right now. So maybe we should get in that business. Like I was just watching an interview with Dr. Phil yesterday, and he was talking about, well, there's thousands of hours of me on TV. So it's of me and my voice,
Of course, yeah.
out there, and then there's all the books I've written, and all the literature I've written.
Well, and you've probably seen this. I know you're a Joe Rogan fan. There's now on YouTube like interviews he never did, libraries. Like it's Joe Rogan interviewing Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah,
very easily able to do that. So.
and if you've seen the latest video rendering, I think it's what's it called? Cedra? It's ChatGPT just announced a new video rendering process that they have. Let's see. Well, I should say OpenAI. Let me find the name of it. But it's Sora. Holy crap, dude! Like, I mean, Harold, we'll send you these videos up to put over top. But like, dude, look at this. Watch this. I don't know if you've seen. Have you seen this? Watch. This is a complete AI generated video just from text of a girl walking through downtown Japan.
Wow. And
that's now. Like a year ago, the quality was laughable. It was hilarious. Like watching Will Smith eat spaghetti. It was like a huge meme, and it was funny. And this is only a year later. And this stuff, like if you just glance at it real quick and you're just watching it, or as part of a movie in a clip, you're not going to notice. And where are we going to be 5 years from now? Where are we going to be 10 years from now? Like the exponential growth that it's not even exponential. It is straight up at this point of what AI is capable of doing. And now there's rumors about certain AIs that have figured out how to enhance themselves. So that's the one where people are really starting to freak out about, because if they can enhance themselves, well, they're going to be able to figure out how to shut us out at one point. And I know that's very paranoid talk, but I live in that paranoid world because I've seen so many times, like I was saying, like people are like, oh my gosh, what if this is possible? Most tech people that anything that people are afraid of now, like, oh, I'm being tracked and traced. We were worried about that 15 years ago, and everyone called us nut jobs.
Sure.
But we knew what was happening and we knew what was possible. And we're just like, we just tried to figure out ways to get around it. And that's why I play things like Tor. That's why VPNs. That's why, like, because when you have that like hacker mindset, you're thinking, how do I break into this stuff, or what's possible? At the same time, you now know, oh crap, I'm susceptible to that. So at the same time, how do I prevent it? And that's why security companies like ours exist, because everyone's out there trying to break into stuff, and then all the companies and else like, hey, how do we make it so that I don't get broken into? I need to be safe. So we're just always trying to stay one step ahead of the hackers, and you can't. It's impossible because they move way faster. They're independent. You have hundreds of thousands of people constantly trying to break into something, and you got like a group of 5 guys trying to defend it. And just do the math. Eventually they're going to find something you didn't know, and that's how you get these guys that just figure out crazy. I mean, look at, like we were talking earlier about Loft Heavy Industries. So they're the epitome of the hacker group. I just learned epitome is not a word, and I was a complete moron for using it. So I learned something new today. But these guys, back in the 90s, I remember watching an interview with them, and actually I was reading an interview, and they were talking about how they were intercepting the satellite footage being transmitted, I think from Voyager. It was one of the satellites going around Mars or going to Mars. So they were intercepting. They had a satellite up on the roof, and they're intercepting the transmissions back to NASA because they wanted to know what was going on before NASA even got the footage. And it's like, what? Like, back when I was a kid, it's like not one, could I ever figure that out? Never. But 2, I didn't even think that was something to try to attack, let alone being able to do it. And these guys are just nonchalant, like, oh yeah, he just came back from the roof. They're just installing the satellite where we're doing some crazy stuff. It's like, those dudes are insane. So when you hang out with like crews like that, where they're showing you, oh yeah, I could totally break into the system. Watch this. Like the breaking into the Pentagon with the kitten that everyone thinks it was totally bogus, and absolutely true. Like when you see stuff like that, all of a sudden you live in this paranoid world, because all we see all day long is how people are being massively innovative to break into systems and places in ways that you never thought possible. And then all of a sudden you got that's one more thing lodged in your brain of, now that's something I got to be worried about. Now that's something I got to be worried about. So we live in a world of perpetual worry. That's it. That's all I got.